This episode of Watch Out for Fireballs is brought to you by Randall, our patron. Randall has a brand new webcomic called Crashcoral. You can find out more at crashcoral.com after April 7th. You can find out more about that during the episode. So thank you, Randall. We really appreciate you. We also appreciate all of our patrons. Patrons such as Matt H., Eli M., Casey Francis Alger, Ralph Walbro Emerson, and Aaron Kettleman. Thank you very much. If you'd like to join them, head on over to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. Thank you. My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And you're listening to Watch Out for Fireballs. It is a Games Club podcast.
And this week we are talking about the Shrouded Isle, which is a social deduction game developed and published by Kit Fox Games for the PC in 2017 and the Switch in 2019.
Yeah. And this episode is brought to you, executive produced by Randall, one of our patrons. And Randall has a cool thing coming out that we think you should take a look at. He's starting a webcomic called Crashcoral. If you go to Crashcoral, that's a crash spelled like crash. Just think of the Gabriel Knight guy. And then Coral, CORAL.com. That is the password as well until April 7th. You can check out the first chapter. Yeah. And it is a really cool looking webcomic.
Yeah. And Randall is a longtime supporter and community member. Thank you, Randall.
Yeah. Really great art.
Yeah.
On this. It's Randall is doing the writing, and then someone by the name of Lainey Williams is doing the art, and it's really cool looking.
Nice, nice broad, like broad and brushy, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Broad and brushy. Yeah. Just really cool looking. So check that out. It had like my, natural, fine, happy words for that are not related at all to, I think I hate this video game.
Oops.
Oops. I didn't like it. And then I was like, I kept trying and I'm like, oh, I hate this. Yeah. I think I hate this. No offense to Randall, obviously. And I don't necessarily, I think that there's a cool game somewhere inside here.
There's definitely a possibility here. And, I had played this before and I dug it back then, but I had not put too much time into it. I thought that there would be more here. And also, based on the description, you are leading a cult, and it is a management sim where you are trying, it's sold as a management sim where you're trying to, keep your god happy until it comes back and gobbles everything up and blots out the night sky with blood.
How cool does that sound?
It sounds pretty good.
Yeah. It's I get real false bill of goods senses from this.
Yeah.
I think this will be a shorter episode because it's a weird game. It's going to be mostly generalities, but I think there's a lot to discuss in this in terms of degrees of abstraction.
Yes.
And how that can impact a play experience. This feels like it was sent to punish me as somebody who is like, oh, fuck charm. Like, I just want the flavor. Just give me the numbers. And they're like, you like numbers, do you? What if it was just numbers?
Yeah.
Just, crammed it into my belly. And absolutely bloated me to Violet Beauregard levels.
And it's also a problem of, the theming is here and it's nice. I think this is a very aesthetically pronounced game. It also is kind of paper thin, it's like, you look at something, ooh, is that a nice, stained mahogany? from a distance. And okay, yeah, it's a good piece of wood right there. And you get up close to it, and you see that it's tack paper put over press board.
Ants.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's tack paper.
So it's a veneer that I think makes a really good first impression. But I ultimately felt like, I can be down for some numbers and I can be down for something really, really system heavy. I feel like this is too, theming aside, this is way too simplistic and way too luck based. I kind of felt like there were decisions that I could make, but, regardless of how much I knew about what was going on and regardless of literal spreadsheets that I put together based on the information that I was getting, like what if I optimally keep track of every single thing that I get? My success was kind of determined by, the way that the way that the traits were assigned at the start, basically.
Yeah.
The game, it felt really designed to work me in corners in a way that over the course of my 12 hours with it, I was not able to, outsmart or get around with canny play and better decision making and better planning. Right.
Yeah. It is incredibly luck based.
Yeah.
100%. I also am going to say, it's very rare that you're going to hear me say this about a video game. I want this needs more words. This needs more flavor. Like the flavor is visual and you're kind of told it, but with a couple of exceptions, I wanted some spooky little short stories and stuff. I wanted to have little emergent, scary narratives.
Yeah.
Come from this, like, there's a famine, and I take an option that is very occluded in meaning, and then it's up to me to notice that my population goes down afterwards.
Yeah,
and I'm like, I decided to allow my cult to start eating each other. I wanted that kind of emergent storytelling where you kind of read between the lines of this stuff, and there's just not enough text supporting the numbers.
Yeah.
And the text in the game and the numbers don't have anything they don't enforce one another.
Yeah.
This is a game, like one of my things that is frustrating. So in the video game Undertale, I really hated how there's a big reveal in that game that experience points are actually like execution points. Like this whole thing you thought was XP, it's bad.
Yeah.
And the comparison I had that to was like, what if you just reskinned Doom and you basically made Noah's Ark 3D? Like I'm firing happiness bullets. You're still doing the same thing. You just call it good or bad.
Yeah.
And then pretend like that's a reveal. Right. This game, you could do that with any aspect of it. It's the cult flavor comes through in that you are encouraging ignorance rather than, scholarship or what have you, the opposite of ignorance. But that's just calling something the opposite of what it is. That's just labeling a bullet from Doom to a smile. And you're rapid firing smiles. You're doing the same thing, but you're just calling it something different.
Yeah. And outside of certain very particular circumstances, like in the community chest kind of things that you get, which is where you're going to get the writing in this, is where you're making those little choices, which repeat very frequently. You're going to see a lot of them. Outside of those, they're not really linked to each other. Ignorance does not come at the expense of, penitence. During the course of, during the normal course of play, where you're going to be making the bulk of your decisions, right?
It's a fucking bizarre video game.
Yeah.
Like, and we're going to get into all these individual aspects of it, but it will be a slighter episode. There's also a lot to talk about here in terms of, to me, and again, I don't want to, go off hinged or anything like that, go off handle, but the ways it failed, like ways that I wish this could have been better, or ways that I think that they could have gotten what they were going for, or something cool.
Yes.
With a little bit of tweaking.
A little bit more intro matter here. We are going to be talking about the one version that you can get a hold of today, which is the combination of the base game and their kind of free expansion, Sunken Sins, is what it's called. That addresses many of the kind of concerns that were voiced with the original base game. All of the changes seem to be pretty good, adding complexity, addressing some of the randomness, though not all of it by far. And there are points where we're going to describe something. We're not going to call out like, oh yes, this is, this was different in the base game, because I only played a little bit of that. I don't know. And also this game is not very well documented. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very not documented, and we'll talk about that as well. It was hard. I wanted to look up all the community chest stuff to look for those cool short stories. Can't find them.
Nope.
Want to find the endings to this game?
No.
Can't find them.
Nope.
When was the last time that happened? It's like a game where nobody to put up all the endings. The basic concept of this: so you play a leader of this island village. They are also a cult. The cult is dedicated to this elder god Chernobog. I do love Chernobog.
Chernobog's good.
It's my special baby. This is black god in Slavic languages.
Yes.
Is what that translates to.
Yeah.
And Chernobog's coming back 5 years. And you have to spin a lot of different plates to make sure the plates are properly spun when Chernobog comes to knock them over.
Yeah.
It's the village's adherence to these different religious tenets. It is purging the sinners for Chernobog, and then it's also keeping the families happy.
Yeah. We make analogies and references to The Simpsons quite a bit. As I was playing this, it is very much a game that is made up of trying to keep 6 or 7 different Pinchy the Lobsters alive.
Yes, that's literally it.
Yeah.
And every time you put a little salt water in Pinchy Tank 1, a little salt water is taken away from Pinchy Tank 2.
Yeah, and you got to keep the lobster and the goldfish alive. You know what? At that point, it's not simplifying things; it's just complicating things to keep Pinchy alive. But it's a good, to compare it to keeping Pinchy alive. But it's a good visual at the very least.
And this could also just be keeping Pinchy alive simulator. If you just reskinned it, the mechanics would be exactly the same.
Yep.
You just add salt, alkaline, just label these things and it would be the exact same game.
Yeah. So because this is a run-based game, because it is so mechanics heavy, it kind of doesn't make sense to do a generality section and then a plot section. So I think it makes sense to talk about aesthetics and development now, and then get into kind of talking about the tenants and houses, sacrifices, the cycle of the game, things like that.
Yeah, and it's also worth talking about because we've been negative, and I intend to continue to be negative. But the aesthetics were a huge draw.
Yes,
it's worth noting that I never played this game, but always wanted to. I saw it, I'm like, that looks fucking cool. I remember seeing screenshots of it. It's really striking. It has this 2-color, aesthetic to it. There are different ways to do it. The default is this real sickly yellow and this real bruise blue.
Yeah.
Like the darkest part of the bruise. And you can switch between these different palettes, and this is really fun. They're called different sickening things.
Yeah.
And they all look queasy and off-putting.
Yeah. There is no design a palette kind of deal. I stuck with the original one, partly because I thought it looked the best. Also, it was the highest contrast. Any of the lower contrast ones made it difficult to look at on the Switch, which is where I played a lot of this. I switched over to the PC when I started realizing I needed to keep track of stuff in a spreadsheet. So when we say 2-color, this is not full Obra Dinn. Where it is fully 2-bit aesthetic. This has variations in tone, things like that. There are there's line weight changes and things, but it's close enough for comparison. And this, predates at least the full release of Obra Dinn as well.
Yeah. They also, blood has a different color.
Yes.
Every once in a while they do. They're basically doing the same trick as Schindler's List.
Oh, yeah.
If you recall that blood and then that red coat.
Yes.
Probably a big influence on this. You could just remap this.
Oh God, no!
Gary, just saying.
I'm saying, wish you wouldn't.
Yeah, just keep the meters up. The actual drawings and figures are very distinctive.
Yeah.
Like the art style of this is good. It's very simple, but it looks good.
Yeah. I like how everybody's eyes are hidden, either in shadow or by hair or by glasses. Kind of just makes everybody look sickly, like automatons, kind of, and nothing is animated. but it all works. And also it does a good job to differentiate the houses, you know, by their different lords and their dress and affect and such.
Yeah, lords and teens.
I will not suffer a teen to live. It is a negative 10 to my obedience.
It's a real big sin to be a teen. Can you imagine being born a teen?
Oh man,
it's not even your fault. And
so the music in this is really good. It's super earwormy. I've been just humming it. And it's also like really atmospheric. Usually those things are at odds. This was composed by somebody named Francois Xavier Bilodeau. It is mostly kind of acoustic European folk instruments here. A lot of good like drone going on. A lot of just like, hey, here's our weird fucked up Romanian banjo.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
Oh yeah. It's real good. Yeah. I mentioned needing more writing and there not being quite enough flavor there. Some of what is there is very good.
Yes.
Some of the community, you're getting the writing in the community chest events. Just in case anybody doesn't know what that means too, that's from Monopoly.
Yeah.
There's just like little scenarios, special little choices.
Yeah. It's like an Oregon Trail when you get to a river. It's like, you're making a choice. Do you want to caulk and ford? Do you want to pay for a crossing, etc.?
Yes. Some of that is actually quite good. I find the tone to be all over the place.
Yes.
With it. Sometimes it is, seems like it's kind of funny or it's light. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's very bleak. And I would have preferred a more consistent tone.
Yeah.
Specifically a more bleak one.
Yeah. Lean toward the bleak. If it gets too funny, I've got a section about these, but like the funniest I wanted to get is when you have your deep ones going around and they have fungus growing off of them, when that starts infesting the town and people start eating it. That's about as funny as I want it to be, because that is absurd and horrifying in its own way. Yeah.
Like you want to be, it's not if you're just managing a cult full of idiots, like it's kind of fun because they're idiots, they're cultists, of course they are. Ignorance is a virtue. Mm-hmm. But you want there to be space for scariness. Yeah. You don't want this to be like managing Springfield or managing Pawnee or something. And that felt sometimes like, God, you fucking morons.
To give an example of where this comes up a little short in a specific, the house that is in charge of whipping sinners, they want nicer whips, and that requires money. So it's like you can either take it out of the farming funds, or and that is another family, or you can take it out of the I don't know, the secret police or whatever, and that'll make both of them mad. Or you can say, no, the whips you have are fine. It's like, I don't know, you should be able to manage your whip funds.
Yeah. It's kind of like having like 1,000 babies and they're all, they've all lost the lids to their yogurt and they're all not hungry anymore. And it's an emergency from all of them.
Yeah. And if the yogurt lid stays lost for 2 or more rounds, then you're dead. They will stage a coup.
Yeah, they'll kill you in the night.
Yeah, they'll make yogurt lids out of your eyelids.
You'll get yogurt boarded. There's a lot of substances you could waterboard with. Why don't we do like a thicker or more extreme version of a board, like Gatorade boarding?
Gatorade boarding should be thicker.
Yeah, Axe body spray boarding. Board with a lot of stuff.
We really hemmed ourselves in here unnecessarily.
Yeah. So it's very easy to forget the writing. There's not very much of it.
Yeah.
So the team was a little bit distressed how quickly people devolved into a pragmatic mindset when approaching the game. And I remember reading that factoid as well and just being like, oh, you did it though, because you didn't add other stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Like if I'm supposed to have any feelings about sacrificing one of these characters, like source fiction, like you have to make them characters.
Yeah.
And you have to like give me things about them. There's comparisons to be made in this in Darkest Dungeon, where you're both making practical decisions and you're supposed to consider the weight and start using people as a resource. I never felt a damn thing doing it.
And so to give you a sense of like how little I ultimately thought of this aesthetic, or, you know, the thought of the scenario, like thought about it, not of it, because I still think the aesthetic is good and the scenario is fine. But like when I was making the notes, I had to go back in and look at a Let's Play to see what action you were commanding each of your houses to do each month. You know, like, okay, so like I know that the second one from the right, that's the penitence one, so it's the little whippy whip. What do they actually do? Like, okay, well, the middle one is discipline. That's the hammer anvil. But like, oh, they're going around confiscating stuff. Okay. Like as I was picking which person to field on a given month, I wasn't thinking like, all right, we need to get our confiscations up. Just like I was never reading the text about their success or failure. It's like, okay, you can say, oh, we had a poor outcome. We only managed to find one old world book and burn it. It's like, well, okay, no, all I see is poor and the -1. It's like, damn it, I really better try to make up for that in a later throw. Yeah. Right. It all devolves to wireframe. And I kind of feel like I can't be held responsible for that happening.
It's definitely something that is baked into the game. Yeah. Like it is a ludonarrative consonance, or not consonance, dissonance in a different way. Yeah. You know, it's the two things just not even being in the same zip code. Yeah. Also surprising. So I was surprised when I read that. Also surprising when I looked at the other games this company made. This is by a company called Kit Fox. Previous to this, they've been around since 2014. They made Shattered Planet and Moon Hunters. The biggest thing is that they went on to make Boyfriend Dungeon, which I associated with lots of flavor and is also like a real indie darling. Yeah. Yeah. So I haven't played that game. I don't know anything about it, but I was very surprised.
That's a name. That's a name that I saw pop up in whatever year that it came out. I think it was like a 2019 game. Folks were kind of into it. I mean, even just because of the premise, the dating sim, dungeon crawl kind of thing. You kind of feel bad for them, because if that came out in 2019, they had to put it out alongside Hades, which was going to eat its lunch. That's a bummer.
Which is also a dating sim. Yeah. Dungeon crawl, basically.
Or has appeal on both of those kind of deals. Yeah. That's a bummer.
Yeah. I think even though I think Boyfriend Dungeon did fine.
Yeah, true.
I think did pretty well, if I recall. Very surprised to see it was the same people. Yeah. This game began life in 2015 as a Ludum Dare project called The Sacrifice.
Right. Second game this quarter. Well, it's not the same quarter. Second game in like 2 months that began as a stripped back version in Ludum Dare. This is the Game Jam theme. Yeah. Weirdly. Along with that was also called
Sacrifices Must Be Made.
Oh yeah.
So
wow.
Yeah.
The theme here is called, or the theme of that game jam, of that Ludum Dare, was "You Are the Monster." Their idea was like, okay, we're not going to make you like a literal physical monster, but what if you are the head of this organization that is making monstrous choices and doing monstrous things, right?
Yes. Bloodborne is cited as an aesthetic inspiration for the game. Since that came out a little bit earlier in the year this was started. You can kind of see it.
Yeah.
Kinda.
Yeah. The overall aesthetic is kind of a mishmash of like different regions in Europe and different like time periods. So you have, Bloodborne-esque Gothic, cathedral kind of architecture kind of dealies next to like, Slavic thatched huts and things like that from earlier time periods and stuff. It's kind of a big mishmash. Also, one of the house leaders house names is Yosefka, which is, they've said like, we just named it after the doctor in Bloodborne, Yosefka, and her clinic.
Yeah, we're talking about the final version of the game. One of the changes they made for that from the Ludum Dare version is that you make a sacrifice and it's mandatory each season. The early version made the sacrifice optional, which was undramatic, and there'd be a lot of time, and there were a lot of times when you're playing just the current version where you don't want to sacrifice somebody. Yeah. The log line, the cell line for this, a game about making bad decisions or what have you. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of times where you just have to do it. Yeah. And it sucks and it's disadvantageous to you completely.
Yep. And it will put you behind. And so a big part of it is planning so that you never have to make a decision from the back foot again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The original version was also much more kind of a traditional management sim. You were not keeping track of these religious tenets and things like that. It was more kind of normal meters. You had like happiness, food, shelter was a big deal. Like you're on an island and storms would blow through, and you had to decide at the beginning of each season how you wanted to allocate your resources to kind of keep things together. So it was less about being spiritually ready for the awakening of your god, but kind of just making it to the day that things would come out, and all of the religious sacrifice stuff was happening alongside that.
Yes. Yeah. So the reason why they changed it to make it these religious tenets was to make it more about the character of the cult.
Mm-hmm.
I understand why they wanted to do that. I think that for that to work, the cult would have to have unique aspects.
Yes.
To it. It seems like just a real classic jerk cult. There's not what's the unique selling point of Chernobog? Sell me on Chernobog.
Yeah.
Why would I understand what I get out of worshiping Hastur?
Right.
Like, I understand the benefits I get from that. I do not understand what is interesting about this cult.
Yeah.
I guess like them praising ignorance is more interesting than them liking food.
Yes.
I guess.
But also that's kind of the only one that feels like it's a little bit out of the ordinary, because like otherwise, a lot of these are just kind of Chernobog standard, Puritan, Northeastern kind of things. Like, oh yes, we value penitence and obedience. Like, no fanciness. Discipline is primarily about like, when people fall down on that, they're enjoying sweets and desserts.
We'll get to that when we start talking about like, if anything, this game is trying to say.
Yeah.
Because it's if this has as a message, I don't think it's a very complicated message.
Right.
In the game. But yeah, it doesn't, all cults like fervor the same way all cults want food. It's not that much more interesting to have fervor replace food.
Yeah.
I
was almost halfway expecting a reveal to be that this was taking place in the modern day. I thought they were going to do like
the village.
Yeah, I thought they were going to do the village on us.
Get Shyamalan.
Yeah, not the case. But just when I was paying attention to the flavor, they were talking about like, oh yeah, all these old world books or these old world artifacts or whatever. It's like, does somebody have like a handheld Tetris machine and they're a witch
or a Book of Eli? Somebody's got the old books from the before world.
Does somebody have a Book of Eli?
That's going to be a -5 on discipline, but a +10 on fervor. Even if it couldn't even bring in the Book of Eli and get me to care about what's going on here, it's still going to become numbers. Book of Eli.
Everybody's favorite Denzel Washington movie, The Book of Eli.
Yeah, Book of Eli from the Postman School. Yeah. So this is these are the main things that differentiate this between its Game Jam version. But if you look at them, they don't look that different. Like there's not tons of changes in this in terms of numbers, in a general sense. Yeah. Like looking at old scenes of the sacrifice and stuff like that, like it feels different, but it doesn't feel that different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you get the sense that a lot of this was kind of already there, from the jam. The Sunken Sins, this expansion was put out to address some of the major problems that people had. One thing was like when you did an inquiry, like when you did an inquisition into a house, which is something you do every round, it was random what you would pull back. And because learning about somebody's vices is so much more valuable than learning about their virtue. Just for making choices for your team. It's kind of like, all right, well, it's a 50-50 roll when I drill down on this guy, what it's going to pull back, and it may or may not be useful information. The expansion was the place where they added the ability to kind of call that shot, which answer you were going to go looking for. Additionally, they lengthened the game from 3 years to 5 years.
Ensuring that it's much, much, much harder to beat.
Yes.
In addition to Boyfriend Dungeon, which they're real big on, they also are, I think they're currently making Paparazzi.
Yes. Yeah.
Paparazzi looks real cute.
Mm-hmm.
I won't hold this against him.
Nope.
So as we mentioned, there are 5 religious tenets that you maintain in this game. Each of these is governed by one of 5 noble houses.
No.
So ignorance, what? Yeah, that's right. Ignorance is governed by House Kageni. I don't know. They burn books, as you do.
Yeah, I'm just going around, and you think, okay, you're doing this every month for years and years, most likely. How many books you got to burn? Mm-hmm. Hey, buddy.
Yeah,
books is expensive. Yeah,
books is expensive.
Yeah,
they buy them by the pound in the front of a Barnes and Noble.
Oh yeah. You get just books by the foot. Like when a rich person is decorating their house. Do you want to hear? Do you want to hear how depraved? So my parents got when they bought their condo that they live in, the person that they got it from had it decorated like it was real, kind of just like gaudy, like veneer of rich person kind of stuff,
Okay.
And in the half bathrooms, this is how deranged this person was. Instead of just having like a nice, tile up or painted the wall in neutral color, they had wallpaper up that was bookshelf wallpaper.
Ooh.
So
I could kind of get up with that.
In a half bathroom though.
It's very funny.
It's extremely funny.
My library toilet.
Yeah.
Rates my morning constitutional.
Yes, I'm going to take my constitutional amongst the classics.
Candide. Candide.
Sartre makes me fartra.
Candide.
Yeah, but this is alongside like the entire basement was full of like stuffed animal heads because like her long deceased husband was a hunter and they had like brass chandeliers and stuff. It was real tacky. It was real bad.
Okay, I just want to know, when you said stuffed animal heads, I was expecting like Cabbage Patch dolls and little plush animal heads.
Yeah, with their eyes burned out with cigarettes. Yeah.
Yeah, so real weird thing to say. The basement was full of stuffed animal heads. I was imagining like a ball pit. Open the door, just Mr. Honey Bunny, and just his head, like just as far as I could see. You had to dive in like Scrooge McDuck to do laundry.
I don't know. I don't know how to more clearly say what I mean.
No, I don't think you were wrong. I think it's just very funny that like stuffed animal means like either Peter Cottontail or Paddington Bear or like some fucking grisly nightmare trophy. Like, failure of the language.
Oh my God. So, fervor, the second one, the second of these virtues, which is, how likely are you to go into speak in tongues and whatnot? That's governed by House Yosefka. Which manages like the construction of these monuments. They managed to build like whole monuments within a month. Yeah.
Yes. Discipline is House Caldwell. They confiscate luxury goods, so you're not allowed to have sweets and the like.
Nope.
Penitence is House Efferson. They flagellate sinners, so they got the whip.
Of course.
And then finally, you have a secret police. This is the obedience. What is the house?
House Blackbourne. Yes.
Yeah, Blackbourne. These guys investigate heresy, and are all real jerks.
Oh, of course. The randomized names, for first names and traits that are laid out, and also traits are not necessarily weighted to go toward one place or another. So you could have what is apparently the lead of a house that is dedicated to obedience, who is a mortal sinner with the highest negative obedience you got.
With a teen affliction.
Yeah. Teen leaders. So there are 2 ways to get in trouble The first is by having any of these tenants rest below 25%. So if they rest below this line at the end of a season, or 50% in some circumstances, you're going to be put on notice, and that starts flashing red. If it's below that line at the end of the next season, then the game will end. It says, if you're lax in discipline, just people are showing up to things late, and interrupting their elders and whatnot, and the society will be ripped apart at its seams by its own indolence.
Yeah, somebody introduces pool to River City. These have a lot of flavor. These endings for each one, I'll say that. There's a cool one where it might be fervor. You stop dreaming of Chernobog, so you stop being able to sleep.
That's the ultimate ending if you get to the end of the 5 years and penitence is your lowest one.
That's the penitence thing there. Mm-hmm. But some of these are cool. Yeah. Like what happens? Like people stop. Like nobody's doing confession, and the place gets boarded up. Things like that.
Yeah.
You also have to keep the houses happy. This is where they start feeling like idiots.
Yes.
So if a house is rebellious at the end of a season, you have until the next season to raise them back up to at least is kind of unhappy. Or they do a coup and they'll kill you. Mm-hmm. So some of these are community chest events where it makes sense for a house not to like something. Like you make an example. But also everybody, all these like hard asses who, I'm in charge of pain, well, I'm in charge of negativity, are all like, pick me.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the things that'll make them sad is not putting them on the case, even when they just fuck everything up.
Right.
When you're actually playing the game, like they all want to be chosen.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. They're all real petty little babies.
They're not on the same team. And this is a game that is kind of about making a team out of different strengths or weaknesses. Nobody wants to meet you halfway. Like there is not like Troll Boy, you understand why it can't be you, right? And if Troll Boy understands,
you've been goosed. It's like a band. If you went to a band where everyone is always wanting to do a solo, and any time that is like, oh, this person gets to play a solo, or we're just going to do a verse now, everybody gets 5% closer to quitting the band. Like every single time it happens, and not just quitting the band, like burning it down.
Oh, stabbing you in the back, hollowing out your skull and using it as a mic holder. Yeah.
Yes.
No, it's and if it was 5% every time, regardless of the context, like, I don't know, maybe I gave you the benefit of the doubt because you were just rumored to be bad in this particular avenue and you really whiffed it. So like, maybe if I don't pick you next time, maybe the hit that the house takes, like maybe you understand why I didn't do it. Also, you all know that if I fail at this, we all die. Or, we're all going to die anyway, but like, we got to be pulling in the same direction here.
Yeah.
Like,
do you guys even like Chernobog?
It is modeling intrigue in kind of the least intriguing way possible.
Yeah. In a way that just makes everyone seem like a real dumbass.
Yeah.
This plays into, cause we're going to talk about this, how the seasons work here in a second. But it ends up being a thing too. And this drove me fucking nuts. And I want to know if you had a problem with this.
Yeah.
You find out somebody's not on the team.
Yeah.
Right. So we find out somebody is shitty. Like this person's very disobedient. Every time I choose them, every time I click that button, I get negative 30 disobedience. I can't fucking float that. So you don't choose them. So their house gets unhappy. If you sacrifice them, their house gets unhappy at that point. Like I ended up tanking out my house many times just because there was a shithead and there was nothing to do.
Yeah.
And then sometimes if I had two shitheads, I then had to choose the shithead just to sacrifice them next time.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't, it's just like a button I can't press that is just put you on a downward spiral towards that house being upset.
Yeah.
Because you cannot pick their person.
Yeah. So you put a shithead in, somebody who has a mortal sin, say in penitence, and penitence is something that you're trying to pump up. Well, okay, so you're not going to be using this, this shithead in penitence, because you're going to be trying to raise that up so you don't get a game over. All that is doing is you are taking negative points for not using that person in the round. And then if you go to sacrifice and they are the only major sinner who is there, you're going to be sacrificing them and taking an even bigger hit.
An additional hit.
Yeah.
And even though that, the family might kind of understand, it doesn't, it's part of the RNG part of this, which we'll talk about, but you just get locked into situations that are bad situations, but not in a fun way.
Yeah. I mean, you get into situations where, it sounds like I'm complaining that there needs to be planning, but just like the way around them is not actually that much fun, and also kind of takes away from a little bit of the thrill of making decisions in these high tension moments, which is, kind of like I said earlier, the way to not get screwed is to always make sure that at least, 2 or 3 seasons in advance, who's going to be sacrificed when. So that I know that when I bring somebody forward, I didn't just sacrifice somebody from their house. And also I want to give a little bit of time pumping up that house's favor. So when I execute that person,
you can cushion it.
Yeah. So I can cushion the blow. So it's like, it is all about knowing what you're going to eventually need to do and trying to stay ahead of it so that you don't end up falling behind and end up trying to work at it from downhill. You want to be pulling from uphill, not pushing from downhill, right?
Well, yeah, that's the ideal thing, but you are very limited in your tool set of things you can do to cushion the blow and what have you.
Well, especially as the game goes on and you start working with houses that are half full. It might be I don't have a lot of I may only have one option to raise obedience, and doing that is going to actually get me killed because this other house, by not being used, is going to assassinate me. Yeah,
and not only do you end up in those limited situations there in the beginning when you have very limited information, you're not really making those decisions either because this game leaks out information slowly.
Yeah,
we're kind of dancing around the core mechanics, and I promise we're describing something that sounds interesting. I promise it's not that interesting. It sounds cooler than it is. We're describing what sound like cool gameplay problems, but really it's doing 3 different towers of annoy who all affect each other. It's just Pinchy's tank.
Yeah.
So each season, you go through these 20 seasons, 5 years. Each season is made up of 3 months. There's no difference between the seasons, so it's not like conditions are worse in winter or anything like that, or they affect anything. It's just this cosmetic choice, or cosmetic impact.
Yeah. And the season is basically kind of like your round on this, or at least a turn rather, where you have to pick one scion from each of the 5 houses to be a representative on your council. Okay. And when you start that month, so when you start that season and you get into a month, every month you need to pick between 1 and 3 of those scions to activate for that month to kind of do their project.
Yes. They'll perform their duty based on their house, as we mentioned before. Like some house confiscate things, other houses whip people, etc. And then this will affect the tenants based on the houses they come from, and their traits.
Yes.
So, for example, Yosefka has a chance to raise fervor. That's the fervor house. Each individual thing that they do, they'll do 3 little actions here that are represented by their traits, has a chance to be successful or unsuccessful. So there's a dice roll as well in this.
As far as I can tell, I couldn't determine if the chance of success at these is determined by your trait, determined by favorability, or if it is just by random. If I picked somebody to do fervor who had a really high fervor stat, who was from a house that was zealous, I would get poor outcomes. It felt like as many times as not. So it kind of like the first of the big shifts that happen when you choose somebody just totally felt like a dice roll to me.
It's also the fact that this is so poorly documented online.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to find out exactly what was happening. What it felt to me was like a dice roll on top of their traits.
Okay.
To me. So if somebody had good traits, they might be more likely to get a good result and end up in the positive. But it wasn't guaranteed. That's what it felt like. But again, it's not explained.
Yeah, and then their trait is accounted for anyway, because like they may be working to increase ignorance, but if their trait is for fervor, then it will affect fervor as well, kind of the next one. And that is just straight depending on what their kind of virtue is. So there's like the virtue part and then the vice part, and just if the virtue is +10, you get +10 to whatever that tenet is, and if their vice is -15, it'll be -15. So that's just kind of straight, and there is no, variance in that.
So to back this up a little bit, because it's confusing. I know it's hard to, because we're describing something that doesn't have a metaphor to it. We're describing numbers. Like this is the Watch Out for Fireballs episode on Excel. So each character has a positive and a negative trait.
Yes.
That they have. And these can be related to any of the virtues, and they can be varying strengths.
Yes.
So you can have, you're rumored to have high fervor, and then that's their first level. We don't know exactly what it is. We know it kind of benefits fervor. Mm-hmm. We can do an inquisition. We'll talk about that in a moment. Put that in your cap to find out exactly what it is, and find out that their high fervor thing is they're like a singer.
Yeah.
Right. So they inspire people through their words. This gives them a +10 fervor value. When they are chosen at the beginning of the month to do whatever their job is, whether it's burn books, increase fervor, or anything like that, they will have that fervor effect, or more likely to have that fervor effect.
Yeah.
And +10 fervor.
And because that is not random, that's kind of what you're planning around. So even if you're not going to be, choosing somebody, like choosing to make somebody burn books to raise ignorance, like you can't depend on that choice, actually having an impact. The bigger choice would be to, pick somebody who might have a definite chance to raise it, or just making sure that you don't pick somebody who's going to tank it.
Yes.
You're going to be making negative choices, which is like, no matter who I lay out over these 3 months, I need to make sure that I am not kind of making deductions from this one account, and it will fill up kind of incidentally as time goes.
It ends up, it's one of the more counterintuitive things in the game.
Yeah.
If I want to increase ignorance, it's not important that I burn books. It's important that I have a dullard do anything. And if they build a statue, people are going to watch it and be like, man, I really like the ignorant way that guy builds a statue. I would like to be more ignorant myself. And that will increase ignorance in the village.
Yeah.
Every time you're choosing one of these actions that are basically anonymous, you're choosing the person. There are 3 little blips that happen, 3 like events that are related to these virtues and vices. I talked about their virtue. It could be like they're a singer, so they're very fervorous. They also get a vice or a sin, and that can be minor or major as well. So that could just be like, oh, they're a little bit lazy, so you get a little bit, less. I don't know what would be I can't remember which one's the opposite of lazy.
Yeah.
But you get -5 points in one area.
Yeah, it'll draw down from discipline. Yeah.
Yeah, -5 for discipline, or they could be, narcoleptic and get a -30 for discipline.
Yeah.
With that, and just choosing which buttons to press that either will raise or lower your 5 different meters is the game.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing every month in the game.
Yeah.
The second part of the game, and then that also affects their houses. So if you choose, they're all pick me. Every house that doesn't get picked whines about it, and their approval goes down. Every house that does get picked, and you can pick between 1 and 3.
Yeah.
For some reason, you can't have everybody do everything.
Nope.
The second part of the game is figuring out what those virtues and vices are.
Right. Because if you don't know this, if you don't know who somebody is, if you just send them in with question mark virtues, question mark vices, it won't even show you when it's giving the rundown at the end of a month within a particular season, like how it was affected. It just kind of the meters move. So you want to do whatever you can to know who you're going to be sending out so that you are not accidentally putting yourself in a situation where a meter is drawn down and it will kill you.
Yeah. I don't want to send, my scholar out. You would think, not to enforce ignorance. You don't want to send him out at all.
No.
Because he's going to have that effect no matter whether he's building buildings or, busting skulls.
Yeah.
He's doing it in a scholarly way.
Yeah. Old Jimmy Syllables is over here using big words while he's whipping somebody.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't have that happening because it's Chernobog's gonna know he's keeping accounts. Like a lot of this really does feel like you are just like kind of transferring money between different accounts, except there's a little bit of leakage between them.
It's a little. I said Towers of Hanoi, but really what I wanted was that putting different volumes of water into the puzzle. The way you find out what their virtues and vices are is through inquiries. You get depending on how much a house likes you, you can have between 0 or 2 of these available. I don't know. You're a very polite cult leader. It's like, it's not a good time for you. Okay. I won't do it. And you can do these at the beginning of the month before you choose your advisors. You get a limited number of them. You can inquire as to the virtue or vice, and these have 2 layers.
Yeah.
It starts as question mark, then becomes a rumor, then becomes we know what the thing is.
Yes.
A thing that just adds like an annoying Excel-like complication to this is that houses do not like being inquired upon.
No.
So you need to know this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to. This is the game. But doing it is going to inherently make some of your meters go down.
Yeah.
You can usually inquire about a vice once for free.
Mm-hmm.
Vice or virtue rather for free. And then the second time or inquiring about any vices always cost reputation.
Yeah. So, say you play somebody, I guess I should say it this way. Say somebody has question marks on both their virtue and their vice. If you want to use inquiries, and you would need to do this over the course of a couple of different seasons, the total cost to figure out what they're all about is going to be -12 favor. So yes. 0, -3, then -3, then -6. And on the expenditure to get all these. You may learn about some of these just by using them, but also that may hurt something, when you put them out, it'll have a negative effect that you otherwise could have avoided if you just play them blind. Now, take that -12 across, I think that in each individual house can have maybe, I think it's up to 8 people in it, something like that. And if you are doing full inquiries every single time, every single season, and then also every month after you play somebody, that is going to put a whole bunch of overhead on your favor with a particular house across the board. So when I was failing, early on, well, I spoiler, I never actually beat this game.
I didn't either.
Right. Not for lack of trying.
If that's your cue right now, just to turn off the podcast because we're gamer cocks, please.
Okay, yeah.
Of course we don't. Of course we don't like it. We're not good enough.
Yeah. But like when I was failing faster, let's say when I was biffing out in year 2 as opposed to year 4, a lot of it was, just houses betraying me, staging a coup. And, that was when I started doing accounting and realizing that like, no, I need to if I'm going to use an inquiry, I need to use it on vices only. Pretty much.
Yeah.
And kind of keeping that powder dry and only making small deductions every time I went, and using like context cues based on like the thing that they said when I picked them, or like what little tooltip popped up. And it's like, oh yeah, this person always looks a little bit guilty when I talk to them. It's like, okay, well, what could that possibly have to do? And eventually I just learned what those corresponded to. Right. So good.
So this could be, I could be ignorant about this, but I try to do that as well. And to me, those suggested directions of a vice, but not severity.
It was so on virtues. When you select somebody, they're put me in, champ. I'm really happy about how it's going to go. Like their little bark that they do there, that will always tell you exactly what their virtue is. So you can figure out like, okay, this is what somebody who is uneducated would say. Here's what somebody who is a masochist would say. Here's what somebody who's a sadist would say. It's the same every single time. Okay. And then like the little, when you are picking them, when you're picking them, and you're like mousing over and it says, yeah, this person looks guilty. This was a person who like wrote stories a lot when they were young, etc. Those could be about either a virtue or a vice, but it will never say like it's more difficult to pick, which one that it's going to be. So it's like which of the different tenets it is, as opposed which tenet it's going to affect, not which specific trait it corresponds to.
Well, not knowing that's what I mean is like not knowing the trait
Yeah.
So what would happen is I would see a guy would have a trait that might suggest that they were a smarty pants.
Yes.
And they weren't ignorant, but I didn't know how much they were. So while I'm feathering that throttle on doing inquiries, oh shit, they're a super genius.
Yeah, they're an artist. God damn it, -30. Fuck.
They're an artist. They -30 me, and I don't really feel like I had a good way to avoid that.
Yeah.
Like, what happens when you don't? When we talk about this being RNG based, what happens when you properly feather the meters to manage all of them is you don't get enough information to not just literally walk into a pit where you die.
Yes.
Like you just do something where it's like, well, shit, I can't really recover from this. This has tanked me, so I may as well just start over. Because, and if I don't think it would have been appreciably better if the barks were the same for the Vice, because then it just becomes a game about memorization. Yeah. Like I just know this combination of words means that they're a scholar,
which it absolutely is with the virtues. Yeah,
right. Which is what happens with the virtues, and that's fine because you don't want to be spending money on virtues. You want to be able to intuit that, but it's just you're not really intuiting it. You're just eventually learning this combination of words means this number,
and that that undercuts the game being about making decisions, right? Because, by virtue of the way it meets out information, like, you're making second or third order choices that may deprive you of something later on, to where you would have certainty that you were not going to be fucking yourself. But because everything does feel a little bit random number generated, and also because everything is so heavily weighted to, really backfire against you, like a good the best virtue you can get is +15. The worst vice that can be put on somebody is -30, right?
Yeah.
So, and the way things generally work out, like the highest net positive swing you can get is like a +5 on any of these. So you're always drawing more from somebody else's account when you're raising yours. And you're just trying to make sure that you are very slowly adding roughly a little bit more drop by drop into the overall pool while making borrows from these different accounts.
It's the best you can hope for is 4 steps backwards, 5 steps forwards.
And hope that in those 4 steps backwards, you're not picking a direction that will put you into a pit with spikes at the bottom of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's a really good chance you'll just lose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that was in service of talking about these inquiries where it is going to be punishing you. Like, yes, you are going to get better at making decisions on your tenants, and keeping those filled up at the expense of making sure that every single house hates you as much as possible because you're making, -12 total, deductions from their favor accounts, every single round when it swings from like +100 to -100.
And doing those is tough because you don't get that much favor for picking a guy.
Right.
You're going to make up most of that in the community chest stuff, and that is entirely random.
Yes. Yeah. But reputation is cost of doing business, right? By picking somebody, regardless of if they're better than others, you're going to raise your favor with one house and it's going to lower with others. This is also diluted. So if you pick 3, the overall positive is going to be split, but the overall negative is going to be split as well. So you may think that you're like gaining more just by picking one person, or I'll pick 3 and it's going to raise up. That just kind of dilutes everything as it goes along as well. And there are conflicting kind of reports based on like if there is a net benefit to just picking one person or always picking 3 as it goes and hoping that it balances out.
Yeah. Sometimes you're going to want to just pick one to mitigate damage because you ended up with a team of assholes.
Yeah.
Down there. And that's not sustainable. You can only do that for a short amount of time before everyone gets really upset with you.
Yeah.
At this point. So eventually you want to get all positives or close to all positives you can.
Yes.
Get a good team. These are my good advisors. The problem is you do have to sacrifice an advisor at the end of every season. So you won't be able to keep your good team. But part of the process of like getting closer to success is finding that.
Yes. Yeah. Part of what you're doing when you're making inquiries and putting your team together is you're looking for major virtues and major sinners. The latter are going to be much more important, specifically because getting rid of them is a mission. In this, like it's part of a major thing. Major sinners, they have the vices that give you negative 30. So you have to have them on your council so you can sacrifice them, but you need to make sure that you're putting them in at a point where you do not need to use them to raise that particular tenet that they happen to be a major sinner in. So it's like, you're kind of going in with one of your 5 tires flat every single time in order to avoid taking a bigger reputational hit than you need to by doing an unjust sacrifice.
Once you know the virtue and vice of a character, you'll get a little preview as to what picking them will do.
Yes.
So you have to get there. And I found very frustratingly on that screen, there was not a house reputation. Meter, which was the other thing I was considering, and the game goddamn knew I was considering it. They just kind of hide that information for a little bit, and that's something I could get around if I was just keeping notes or keeping a spreadsheet.
It starts showing that based on so it'll tell you it goes from like rebellious, dissatisfied, neutral, satisfied, and zealous. So there are 5 different quantizes to those 5 different things, and pluses and minuses instead of being shown on numbers or on meters. It's shown by thumbs up and thumbs down. So if I pick this guy, it'll give him 3 thumbs up, but everybody else will get 2 thumbs down a piece. So I'm netting way more thumbs down than I'm not. It's
and I don't know where they're at on that screen. So I don't know how many thumbs they had previously collected. So the end of every season, you pick one of your advisors to sacrifice. This is going to upset the house as well. This will either have a huge impact on your reputation if they're a minor sinner or if you don't have their sin figured out yet, they'll be really upset, and they'll grudgingly accept it if they're a major sinner, but they still get negative 30.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, Turnabog's making me kill this artist. And this artist is fucking everything up for you and for us.
I've done you a favor. They were, you know what they were doing in their room? They were making beautiful art, and we can't have that.
They think just because you have a truck, you have to help them move. You want me to kill this family member.
Yeah, but no, they just just because I killed Dismas. Ugh.
Yep.
Yeah, get over him. He's gone. He will not join Chernobog with us.
Contemporize, man. They also, just to add another plate that you're spinning in this game, you don't want to sacrifice somebody from the same house twice in a row.
No.
They will be extremely upset. A negative 100 drop in their satisfaction.
Which is pretty much guaranteed to put them into rebellious, which means that you're going to have to coddle them the next time, regardless of which major sinner you're to be hunting. Maybe
regardless of what you need to do with your village. So like getting in these situations where the way that these plates don't work together, getting in these situations where I have to coddle House Yosefka, but the people I can pick from House Yosefka, because of their random traits and vices and virtues, cannot pump the tenant I need to pump.
Yes.
They don't have anybody who is fervorous enough for me right now. So you're just fucked. Like you end up in these situations where you paint yourself into a corner with very, very limited information constantly.
I hate to keep making these like financial analogies, but like ultimately what it ends up getting to is like, all right, if I end this round with House Yosefka still blinking and rebellious, that's going to end the game. Making them happy means that I'm going to put this tenet down in, so I'm going to be dealing with that. It's kind of like doing like strategic bounces on different accounts. Like, all right, as long as only one of these accounts bounces, I can cover that with these others. If 2 or more bounce at the same time, then I'm fucked. So I need to just slowly crash this thing. And like, again, that is sounding interesting. That is making it sound like Frostpunk. Frostpunk it is not.
No, or Frostpunk or like Cart Life.
Yeah.
Like it makes it sound like something with actual, stakes. And when we get to this, we start trying to talk about like what point this is trying to make.
Yeah.
That kind of economic point of like trying to borrow from different credit card accounts, could be an interesting game.
Yes.
That could be a point to that. Whatever this has to say about religion, is my guess, is not that interesting.
Right.
Or dogma or like blind faith or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Not that interesting.
Yeah.
So big bummer in that case.
Yeah. So, I wish that there was more consonance between these.
Yeah, me too. These sacrifices will also affect your tenants. So it doesn't just affect family reputation. It will also affect virtues. So if, the sinner that you're killing is ignorant, then the ignorance will take a hit. But if they're unrepentant, then everyone will become more penitent.
Yeah. They say
this is also a plus and minus. It's basically like a little bonus move that happens on their way out.
Yeah. That also, if you're making a choice based on whichever major sinner is here, that may be the thing that pushes you negative on a particular one, or you may get to a point where, the person that I would need to sacrifice to not make this into an unjust sacrifice, quote unquote, that will actually put us below on one of these tenets, or keep me negative. So I have to make an unjust sacrifice in order to stay alive, so I can go back and fix this deficit.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. It's rough.
It sucks. The main thing you're trying to do is get the major sins uncovered. Yeah. You want this because these are very dangerous people to pick. The other thing is you want to sacrifice them. Mm-hmm. After the first season, you'll get a dream where Chernobog will speak to you and will tell you a tenant to push, which makes that maintenance requirement 50% rather than 25%. Mm-hmm. Really fucking hard. And will kind of obliquely allude to a major sinner they want to see sacrificed.
Yes. So they will say, "The thief, bring him to me." And you might think, okay, that's flavor. All right, so I'm looking for, no, there's information there. So that's going to be a thief, somebody who has a problem in obedience, I believe is the one where that's at. Like that is a particular, major sin that is there, a major vice. And also it's giving you a gender. So you're doing kind of like a guess who thing. So I need to focus my inquiries if I'm going around inquiring about sins on people who are rumored to be low in obedience, but also happen to be male.
Yes. And this is also another memorization based thing.
Yeah.
Bring me the thief means something, but then the sins don't correspond to those 1-to-1.
Yeah. So is that the embezzler or is it the
swindler?
Yeah. Swindler.
Yeah. Stuff like that. So you eventually just kind of figure that out.
Yeah.
It's just trial and error to get it. Sacrificing that person will cause another dream. So we'll get another tenant, will get emphasized, which can provide you with some relief.
Yes.
You want to move that tenant on to another thing, and also gives you another sinner.
Yeah.
If you get all of them, that's how you get like the golden ending.
Mm-hmm.
You want to kill all the sinners.
Yes.
So it's ending the game okay with all the tenants and getting rid of all the major sinners.
Yes. Yeah. And that rotating, okay, so, just whichever inventory Chernobog's trying to push this season, gotta make sure we move.
You give away GameStop memberships.
Yeah. Gotta make sure we move corn this month.
Chernobog.
There's some elegance there, because if it's saying like you really need to be as disciplined as you can, well, I don't really have a team or people that I can put forward to raise discipline. I'm in real trouble if that is something that I need to be keeping up real high. I really want to be aiming to sacrifice whichever major sinner they ask for, because there's a chance that it's going to move over to something that I have a little bit more strength in. That, and, as you are raising something up above 50, naturally when it moves to something else, if that is really high, you can start kind of making... that's your cushioning. So like I'm doing real good in fervor, so I can make a bunch of deductions from that to raise my obedience using this particular team when I play it the next time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
There are a couple added wrinkles. So that was the game.
Yes.
Basically, not for 3 seasons, what we're describing.
3 years.
And I know it was complicated the way we described it. In play, I mean, it's worth noting you're just pushing buttons on these things too. Like when we say, picking an advisor, it's just you picking a card.
Yes.
Essentially, this is a board game. The Sunken Sins expansion added a couple wrinkles, specifically spiritual contagions and the Purification Tower.
Oh man, I want a game about the Purification Tower.
I liked the idea. You just drown somebody for a season.
That's a long time.
It's a long time to drown.
No wonder they start growing gills.
Yeah, a lot of drowning. A lot of drowning going on. So after a couple seasons, the game will say like, hey, this house has a spiritual contagion. There's something wrong with them. These are psychological maladies. They replace some of their virtues and they can spread.
Yes. So what you want to do once this starts happening, these can be hiding if you have not uncovered at least the rumors of somebody's virtue. And you don't want to deploy somebody if they do not have an uncovered virtue, because you don't want them to you don't want to suddenly realize they are, say, hyperactive, right? Because then your discipline's going to tank if you try and play them, right?
Yes.
Additionally, if these guys stick around for a couple of seasons, suddenly this goes over to somebody else. And if you have a particular kind of linchpin on a particular house, then if that person's virtue is overwritten by one of these psychological conditions, that makes them much less useful. Also, you can't sacrifice somebody, or you can sacrifice somebody if they are afflicted, but it will always be counted as unjust. So you need to nip this stuff in the bud as quickly as you can.
And astute listeners will realize in the first part of this, we talked about how it's really only worth uncovering vices. This feels like a patch to make virtues worth uncovering, and I barely have the economy to uncover vices.
Oh yeah.
So now that I want to know virtues for this sub mechanic, like I just feel doubly fucked. It's more complicated, but it's not a particularly interesting way to add complication.
Yeah. And those first few rounds, before you realize, okay, once this is introduced, I need to start uncovering virtues. You have these question mark virtues laying around, and it is spreading. So by the time you start uncovering them, even just incidentally, it turns out everybody here's a psychopath because it's been spreading, and it is impossible for me to cure them fast enough to get rid of this. Oh, that's another playthrough that's pooched. Yeah,
I put this game in an unwinnable state and gained nothing.
Yes.
The way that you determine which maladies they have is either through inquiry or by sending them to this tower and examining them, which we mentioned. This is a dunk tank. They get dunked.
I love the idea of it being a dunk tank. It goes into a physics-based mini game. You have to throw the baseball in order to hit the target.
It's not called anymore. It's dunk. It's a permanent dunk tank. Long distance, like marathon dunk tank, like cross country dunk tank.
Is that how carnival workers describe passing away to their kids? Like, oh, grandma went to the permanent dunk tank.
I think that's how carnival workers describe fragging their commander.
Good, very good.
So, you don't want to put one of these people on the council, as we mentioned. So this just limits your options.
Yes,
more and more.
Yeah.
It's always bad to sacrifice them. You want to cleanse them.
Yes.
You have two choices once you put them in the tower. Your tower has 3 slots as well. You can try purifying them right away. This takes a whole season. They'll be gone for a season being drowned. This has a chance to work. And it can just cure them, or it won't. It also has a chance to kill them, which causes a reputation hit.
Yes.
Or you can examine them first, which just makes it take two seasons. You spend a whole season examining them, and then the next season fixing them.
Right.
To get them back in rotation.
Yeah. And God help you if they're a hermit, because you cannot get them to leave if they happen to have.
I never ran into that. I didn't have a hermit.
Oh,
luckily.
Yeah. You have an option if you get that and they won't leave, which is you can purify them several times in a row, which will awaken them.
Oh.
Yeah, you can effectively lobotomize them by making them into a mindless fish man.
We get fish people. They're called awokens. You get a really negative consequence if you sacrifice them. It threatens you with that. And they don't have a virtue.
No,
they're just fishmen.
This is some of the flavor that really works for me. So in the slot, if you end up using them, where it says like, oh yes, their fervor for discipline made it so that they were real disciplined in the way they got their fervor, plus 15. Instead of saying that, it will say virtue ? And then it will say, yeah, he kind of put everybody off by walking around and speaking in gibberish. Or he spent most of the month swimming, so he didn't really have an effect on anything.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
Yeah,
these little weirdos.
Yeah,
The big the other kind of hook to this, surely you're thinking that can't be the entire game, is just managing these buttons.
Yeah.
There are these little community chest things. These are events.
Yeah.
Here. They pop up as letters, basically, that you get at the beginning of most seasons.
Yeah.
And every once in a while between the month in the season, but usually it's between seasons.
Mm-hmm. And these are opportunities to swing different tenant and reputation values. They're presented as little stories. Somebody will come to you and make an appeal, and you're given 2 or 3 choices. What's nice is there are kind of known knowns, known unknowns, etc. So it'll say like, yeah, obviously siding with this house over the other house will raise your reputation with this one, lower with this other one. But if you take this kind of strange option or a third way, that obscures what's going to happen here. Something that's neat is that there are some of them that are kind of like quest lines as well. So like if you say when this strange person washes up on the shore of the island, if instead of like sending him back out to the water to die, which will help your ignorance, you say, let's keep him around to learn about where he came from. That will hurt ignorance with the chance to get this event later on that will let you get a bigger swing on other stuff later. Yeah.
This is my favorite part of the game.
Yeah.
Were the ones that kind of had long tails and were more interesting. It's hard to overstate how many of these are just essentially an extra, like a bonus round of the game, though.
Yeah.
Like some of them are really cool. Like, oh, this woman, her baby cries whenever it's not in the bath. And if you encourage it to go out to sea, it becomes like the first, awoken baby, basically.
Yeah.
And everyone loves it. It's a good omen. But generally, those ones where it's like, hey, this person's got, this person's apple tree is growing in my yard. Who should have the apple tree? It's just another meter choice.
Yeah.
It's just a bonus round, oh, do I want a +10 fervor or a +10 discipline?
Yeah.
The bounding box of the numbers rules all in this game.
Yes.
There's not space for anything. And it's so frustrating because we compared this earlier to Inscription, like just in terms of game jams with sacrifices in the name.
Mm-hmm.
What if one of these allowed you an undo?
Yeah.
What if one of these allowed you, a free inquiry that just told you everything about a person?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if it just did something other than manipulate the fucking meter?
And what's frustrating is like sometimes they do, but it's random. Like one of them is like you get a letter saying, you must show favor to this house in order to please Chernobog or whatever. Like you can say like, okay, well, I'll just favor that house, or you can ask like, hey, who sent the letter? And I think that it breaks down to like half the time it'll be, you figured out our scheme, you get a negative with them, or it will uncover that this person is superstitious or this person is like connected to the spirit world, and you will uncover a major virtue with that. Yeah.
It's still, I guess what I'm saying is it's too constrained within the bounding box of vices and virtues and how they relate to the numbers of the tenants.
Yeah.
What I want is like Mario Kart power-ups.
Yes.
Like let me undo a month. Let me do like, give me a hourglass that lets me skip a month if it's advantageous. Give me an emergency, festival, like the special like buildings in SimCity or something.
Yeah.
Like give me an emergency festival I can hold to raise any of my tenants 10%.
Yeah.
Just I wanted something here that wasn't just a virtue of vice or a fucking number on a tenant.
Yeah.
It is extremely a constrained game.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want a game to be all text, but I want there to be a reason. And also like I'm making a decision. I kind of want to be able to decide what kind of cult I want to run, to a degree. And I'm asking this to be a different kind of game at that point, but like it is dangling the prospect of like, okay, if you get invested in the content of what you're being asked to manage at all, you're going to be disappointed because it all comes down to the numbers anyway. Kind of doesn't matter if you say like, this person, whether or not this person should get married to someone they don't because it was they don't love just because it's arranged. Kind of doesn't matter if you're like doing an arranged marriage cult or whatever, because it ultimately comes down to in what way am I trying to live to see another season specifically at this point. And that kind of, changes, that has a really bad effect, because it means that like you're just making decisions kind of for right now, or trying to build up enough of a buffer in one particular resource so you can take away later on. So the interesting version of like the arranged marriage choices, like I decide, okay, we're a cult that does arranged marriages. What effect does this have on like population later on? Or like, how does that come back to us, in a different event that is kind of like logic checked. So like, yes, you decided to go with, we are arranged marriages. Well, here is a much bigger stakes kind of thing right now. That'll be a bigger swing. And that happens just enough to piss me off, where it implies that they know that is a cool thing to have happen, but most of it is the apple tree in the backyard.
It is among the least expressive games we've ever done. Like, not only are you're deciding whether you're an arranged marriage cult, that is a powerfully cool flavor choice, and is the kind of thing that I get really jazzed about in a management game.
Yeah.
And you made a comparison to Frostpunk earlier. That is a game that makes those flavor choices tie into mechanics in a way that's fascinating.
Extremely. Yeah.
Like best in class for tying, management into flavor. I don't think it gets better than that game. Yeah. I don't know that it gets worse than this game, because I never cared about, like, I never was making that decision. Like, oh, what would be cool about this? Like, what would be a neat thing should I be an arranged marriage cult? Like that might have this effect and this effect, and I can kind of predict it.
Yeah.
No, I'm just putting out whatever fire happens to be going at the moment.
Yeah.
And ultimately the bounding box of what things can be is so small.
Yeah.
That it's just going to be a +10 or a +15 on a meter.
Well, and also it will punish you for trying to think that there is more going on than there is, So yes, you have these community chest things, but even just by virtue of being one of the main major choices that you make, like, choosing who to sacrifice. The first few times that I played this, I was like, all right, I need to sacrifice whoever I put up to the bat, and they just biffed it, right? Like, you really screwed this up. And I need to punish you and your house for putting us into a worse spot. No, you don't want to do that, because that is unjust. You punish just by the numbers, or just by the trait, not over any kind of like story of what happened over the course of an individual season, right? And that is dissatisfying. It's a little bit like a big anonymous corporation that just does their hiring and firing based on like how much time are you at your desk versus how much time are you taking bathroom breaks,
Yeah. So this is the game. This is what you do, is you manage these meters, tenants, house loyalties. That's basically it, while also trying to find information about the people and uncover sinners and sacrifice them. Basically, the path towards the closest I got to success in this is getting a good team that I could have, so I could ride my meters up every once in a while, building up enough of a buffer to throw one of the loser houses a bone, on my team. And then eventually just dying because of, having to sacrifice my good team.
Yes.
And having to throw in a shithead. That is the main way that difficulty escalates, is you eventually, since you have to sacrifice somebody every season, your options go further down the tube.
Yeah. And you may end up getting to the point where, in order to stay alive, you need to get rid of your most valuable player, or your last option for raising one of the tenants. That ultimately happened to me at a couple of points. Just kind of like, well, fuck, I don't have anybody I don't have anybody who could raise my discipline, or anybody who can raise my fervor, etc. Just replace any of them, because they're all replaceable. That means that is always going to be going down, and I am, marked, I am marked for failure at this point. That was kind of a failure of planning, but I didn't have the information to plan. So I don't know who to be mad at.
If you get to the end, of the 5 years, you get an ending in this game. There are several different endings, and they kind of depend on where your tenants are.
Yeah.
Here. And these are, so if the one that I got, the thing that I ended up seeing, either in my research or in the game, they blend together, because I watched people play this, because I couldn't find a guide, nor could I figure out what I was doing wrong for a long time. Is the low fervor thing. Like you stop having restful sleep.
I like that one. I think that ending is called like Martyr or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, you stop sleeping because Chernobog doesn't talk to you anymore. Like Chernobog decided not to let you dream because essentially you let your cult not worship him anymore. And so
he's also
waste away nothing. Oh yeah.
Yeah. The same way that all the house leaders are just babies. Like,
oh man, the other one that's real cool, and it makes me wish that I had a way to see more of them because the damnation ending is really neat too. The low penitence one. So like Vicar Efferson, the guy is responsible for whipping everybody, puts away the whips, and then when the day comes, Chernobog doesn't rise, but neither does the sun.
Yeah,
and so
great.
the sun just kind of keeps not rising, and then eventually the waves still, and it is just it's so good.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's really cool. I like the golden ending is Chernobog rises. You raise Chernobog. I watched this online. I did not get this. And you can't just find the ending. I had to like find a YouTuber who did it.
Yeah.
And then watch the end of their video. He's a gigantic elder god made of corpses. The implication here being that the people you're sacrificing literally feed Chernobog. And become part of Chernobog here. And then he destroys the village and the sun is eclipsed, which is what you want as a cultist.
Yes. You want Chernobog to rise and you join him. It's kind of taken as read that you will be incorporated. I also like how Chernobog has all these gigantic swords sticking out of him. So that like people have tried to defeat him in the past and it has not worked.
Yeah. I talk a lot of shit about this game. Chernobog is pretty cool.
Chernobog's good. I mean, as much as the cult is pretty. I want to see where Chernobog. As much as the cult is pretty anonymous and just kind of a stand-in for whatever, puritanical kind of thing you want, Chernobog is quite good. I also like what happens. I have no idea how you could actually make this work. If all of your remaining villagers are purified and turned into awoken, kind of the deep one fungus hybrid guys, the sea starts rising, and then all of the awoken all over the world just go into the ocean and form another god, a new god beneath the waters.
Yeah, good for them.
Yeah, I wish them the best.
Yeah, he gained life. Good for him. And I didn't get these endings because the game's fucking hard.
Yes, I wanted to. I really was hoping to get. I mean, even a bad ending as I went along, and I put in a lot of time, but eventually it was just like I would end up needing to like restart until I got a good starting hand, and you kind of don't know when you get a good starting hand until you're halfway through.
It's the experience of playing, so that starting over and going through the inquiries initially and getting a whole new loadout was really demoralizing to me.
Yes.
Because of that bounding box. So like I would play, I would lose, I would start a new game, and it didn't feel like there's a straw man out there who is holding this over me and being like, oh, Gary, you like board game based roguelikes that have to do with cults. But like when you start a new game of Isaac, for example, other run-based games, you're pulling a lottery lever, and maybe in that first item room, you're going to get something really cool. Even if it's not something very powerful, you're going to get something interesting.
Yeah.
The bounding box of the Shrouded Isle is such that pulling that lever again and doing that slot machine again, not only was it very unlikely that I would get something cool, I didn't know what I got for a long time. Yeah. You had to play quite a bit of the game to know whether you're fucked or not. And the best I could hope for is like plus 15 to one number and minus 10 to another.
Yeah.
Like it's such small ball penny ante shit. There's nothing to get excited about.
Yeah.
Like even if you end up with a really good loadout that can win, it's not cool. It doesn't feel cool.
Yeah.
And that's a death knell. It's like the most damning thing I can think or say about this. Like nothing I did ever felt cool.
Yeah. And like
during it,
cool is not enough to make something really good, right? Like,
necessary, but insufficient.
Yes. Yeah.
I need more than that, but it has to at least feel kind of neat.
Yeah. And just like, ultimately there's just not enough going on here. Stuff like, yeah, is pretty tied up, but like once you understand the nature of the choices that you're making and understand that it is kind of always going to be laid out, what you're going to be debiting from in order to credit somewhere else, it really does just kind of become an exercise of numbers. And I really wanted to care about the flavor stuff more. That was heartbreaking because, the promise of this, the log line, a game about running a cult and making bad decisions. Yes, please. Yeah, no, I'm right here. My mouth is wide open for you. Just throw that fish in. I'm a big old dolphin, mouth wide open.
It doesn't. I mean, the real answer to this is the good version of that for me is Darkest Dungeon.
Yeah.
Where you're running a cult and making a bad decision. And the good version of that for you is Frostpunk, where you're also more or less running a cult.
Yep.
It's and I like Frostpunk too. Like I'm not.
I like Darkest Dungeon too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, in terms of the version of this that is Gary Nip and Kole Nip respectively.
Sorry. Gary Wana and Cole Kane.
There we go. Yes, thank you. From the Dispatch, Gary Wana and Cole Kane, respectively, famously addictive. Gary Wana. Those are the versions of this that do the flavor that we want and integrate the play and have the play in a much more interesting and wide space.
Yeah.
Than this. And I hated this. I mean, I feel it's been a while since we've done a lot of things that are at least kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So far this year that like not everything has been a huge hit. There have been things that I haven't liked that much or I've been critical of or had problems with, you know, speaking personally, but this is the first thing we've done this year that I'm like, I fucking hate this.
Yeah.
I never want to play this again. I don't like it.
Yeah. No, this to me, once I learned this was a game jam game, everything just kind of clicked because it doesn't feel like much more than that. And I don't mean to denigrate game jam games, but by, people who make them know you're making them in a week, you're making them under the strictest constraints possible. And they didn't necessarily have those constraints on this. And they still ended up delivering something that feels incredibly hemmed in and just kind of tantalized with a promise of something that I really wanted to play and didn't deliver on it in an interesting or fleshed out kind of way.
I don't want to denigrate like a game jam thing or even say like the easy conclusion would be like, oh, you can start with that and then you have to take it further.
Yeah.
That's not true, right? Like the version of Super Hot that was the game jam was basically Super Hot.
Yeah.
And that's a good enough idea to support a thing.
Yes.
This is spreadsheet guess who?
Yep.
And that's not good. I mean, I feel mean saying it. It's just not good enough.
Yeah. There's it's really similar. There's another game jam game that just came out recently that I streamed is called Lovecrafting. That is really similar. But you're making, it's almost kind of exactly the same. You are making, kind of choices to, improve one aspect of a god that you're summoning at the expense of another. And then eventually it gets, time constrained for when you're making those choices and doing that. It's available in like the Unity web player on itch, like just Lovecrafting is the name of it again. It's kind of neat as a go. That at least has the interest of you're making very quick choices as you go along. So, it's kind of like snap judgment kind of things. So at least there, you're not playing it for hours and hours. As far as like a single player, first person social deduction thing, this game would be poison to you, Gary, because it has some of the least, it has a very, let's say visual novel style opinionated, character design. And also the characters are very unlikable. But Notia is another game that does the single player social deduction where you're trying to figure out where people fall based on particular clues. But that at least is, yes, run based, but you're building up your own aspects to be able to uncover that stuff more effectively as it goes, and it is progressing along a plot as well.
Yeah.
So like if you're looking for either of those, I think it's somebody who's listening. This is not me making a recommendation to you, Gary. I would say like, if this single player social deduction management, I'm trying to figure out who is doing what behind my back kind of thing. If that is intriguing to you, or if the cult theming is intriguing to you, I would say check out either of those first.
Yeah. It's Yeah. The thing about the deduction thing and social deduction, I don't like those games in real life because I don't like lying.
Yeah.
I don't hate deduction. So another version, we're talking about good versions of this, Oberdin.
Yes.
Which is also kind of a logic grid kind of thing. But Oberdin is really cool. The bounding space of being just outside of numbers and not just being meters allows for a much greater possibility of intuitions you can make.
Yeah.
And inductions you can make logically.
Yeah.
It is inherently more interesting to say, oh, this guy wears this style of shirt, so he's probably this nationality, so probably bunks in this area, than to say 15 minus 10 is worse than, plus 10 minus 20.
One is
or whatever. Like,
one of them is making decisions based on numbers that are unveiled to you. The other is making decisions based on content that you are noticing.
Yeah, like context. Yeah. If you break any video game down to just math, which somebody out there is like, oh, you can do this to a lot of video games. Like if you're playing Wizardry 1, it's, you're basically doing die rolls influenced by numbers and trying to keep a series of numbers back. This is a game that really illustrates to me the power and importance of abstraction.
Yes, it really needs to be. Game. It needs to be obscured. Like, yes, I understand that I am trading mana points for either doing damage to an enemy or increasing the HP meter on somebody else. Like, there is an exchange on that. Here it is just all so laid bare and incredibly simplistic, and there are far fewer and there's lack of a better word, synergies or integrations between any of them. Like it is all just like raw. What have we manipulated these values in this particular way based on like what is available to you right now?
Yeah. Big bummer.
Yeah.
I was interested in this. I wanted, I like the way it looks. I wanted an excuse to play it.
Music slaps.
Yeah. Big bummer.
Yeah.
Music is great. Oh well. Thank you, Randall. Who I imagine is a fan of this game, but please don't take anything personally, obviously.
Yeah.
And check out Randall's webcomic.
Yeah.
When you get a chance.
crashcoral.com.
Yeah. If you have anything to say about the Shrouded Isle, hit us up at Duckfeed.tv/contact by April 15th. Also, if you have anything to say about Chuck E. Cheese or Showbiz Pizza, do that. I may have a chance to go to a Chuck E. Cheese.
Ooh.
Did I mention that?
No.
There's one in Beaverton. So I might go to that Chuck E. Cheese before we record that. I don't know. Because it's kind of weird energy, like two adults, daytime. Girls Entertainment Cheese.
Lives for New Year's Eve. Yeah.
New Year's Eve. It's kind of but part of me is like, man, I should eat that pizza.
Oh,
so I can bring that personal experience as an adult.
It's the blandest possible thing.
Yeah, it's horrible, but don't you think it would add some color to the episode if I could be like, yeah, I've got some of that pizza in my fridge right now.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm thinking about it.
Dear God. And now I want to see the one near us closed and turned into it turned into a spirit Halloween, and then it turned into nothing, which is fun. And as far as I can tell, there is not one within an hour drive for me. So
I'm going to be full of factoids for that episode. I've been doing research.
Yeah.
Watching videos and reading things, and there's all kinds of fascinating shit. Like, did you know, Cole?
Okay.
That a little preview for next week, that one of the people who bought one of the retired Rockafire explosion sets runs them out of their restaurant bar or whatever, and it sounds like the gimmick is they don't maintain them. So they just let them have they're all duct taped and their eyes have all turned backwards and their faces are falling off, but they're still going through this macabre parody of the Showbiz Pizza Show. How much would I would pay? I gotta see that before I die.
Or before they die. So cool.
Right before I die, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that shit. I'm super psyched to talk about animatronics, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, if you're from abroad and there is a Chuck E. Cheese equivalent from where you're at, or if you're from a place where like, yeah, it's Chuck E. Cheese, but we call him Sir Richard Roquefort or something like that. Yeah. Let us know because this has a chance of being very American centric. But for the dispatch, we want to hear about your particular animatronic pizza kids attraction kind of deals.
Arcade plus robots.
Yes. Plus whatever, the kids' favorite junk food is. And then the premium episode for this month is going to be Deathloop, which I started, and it's neat.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about that. If you have anything to say about next month's games, hit us up by May 15th. And those games are Fear and Hunger.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Teardown and Max Payne 3.
Yeah. All of which I'm excited to do.
Me too.
Yeah. If you have thoughts about multiple games, please make sure that you submit them as separate responses. That just makes things easier for us.
Mm-hmm. As we mentioned in the last episode, in case you skipped dispatches for some reason, early release is going away.
Mm-hmm.
You can see a Patreon blog post about that, or you can listen to the dispatch.
Yeah.
Last week, if you're a patron, we don't need to repeat ourselves. Just look at those sources for our rationale and the like, and how that's going to be handled.
Yeah. And see what they're going to be replaced with.
Yes. Yeah. And then also you can go to that Patreon. That's patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. If you want to hear our premium episodes, so Deathloop, Max Payne 3, or if you just want to support us or get bonus shows.
Yeah. That's the way to do it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's probably about it.
Think so.
Yeah. What should they watch out for until next time, Cole?
Watch out for me. I have a -30 on ending shows well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, shit. Off to I would sacrifice you, but Chris will come and kill me in my sleep. So
yeah, he'll do that.